Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and it's Thursday, second hour. Jimmy will be here and we'll do open forum. This hour, it's like an open forum, but it's called Ask a Priest. And when we have a priest with us who can answer both your theological and your pastoral questions, we ask them, that priest, to come in and do Ask a Priest with us. And we had, as we mentioned on the air yesterday, had a wonderful retreat with Father David McConey, a Jesuit priest from St. Louis, who came out to give us that retreat and also to do a bunch of talks while he's out here and to do this hour with us on the radio. So Father David McConey will answer your questions if you have a question appropriate for a priest. 888-318-7884. Can't hear confessions. Can't do that kind of thing, but maybe there's a question about your prayer life or your family life or your sacramental life. Maybe you have a question about the history or teachings of the church. It's all welcome. 888-318-7884. Father McConey is a professor of historical theology at St. Louis University and the director of the school's Catholic Studies Center. He's also the editor of the Homiletic and Pastoral Review, and he's published a whole bunch of books, including a new one called Christ Unfurled, the First 500 Years of Jesus' Life. Father David McConey, thank you for being with us.
Sorry, thanks for having me back again.
Congratulations on the latest book.
Oh, thank you.
It's a very clever title.
I thought it was.
It is, because it makes you stop and think for a minute. But the essential premise, if I read correctly, is that the life of Christ, it's not just Christ. Dies, rises, ascends, and leaves.
But it's over, right?
Right, but that the life of Christ is lived, continues in us.
This is one of the great tenets of the Catholic faith, that the Church is the extension of Christ's own self. And any Christian who professes the Creed places his or her trust in God the Father, Christ the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. The Church is just that continuous in-flesh presence of Christ on earth.
And so you take the first 500 years of that. Are you going to do the first 2,000? Like, are you going to do the second 500 years?
Oh, I think the next volume will be 500 to 1,000 to 1,500, up to the Reformation.
Oh, yeah.
So We'll take the so-called Dark Ages, which aren't all that dark, and then the early medieval system.
Yeah, that's a bit of a linguistic dig, really, at the Catholic Church to call it the Dark Ages, isn't it? I mean, in some ways.
Yeah. And in Middle Ages, too, as if there's nothing of its own, it just is a filler between early and modern.
Right, yeah. We're just the stuff that happened in between the important stuff. Wow. A lot of people want to talk to a priest. 888-318-7884, the number, but I see the lines are filling up, and Marie will have calls screened for us momentarily. So what do you do at the Catholic Studies Center there at the University of St. Louis?
Yeah, Catholic Studies came about 30, 40 years ago maybe as a new discipline in which the essential truths of all the academic areas are brought together through the Catholic lens. So how does a Catholic think about the economy different than a non-Catholic? Arts, languages, all the different ways of approaching a university degree. It's a consecrated, or a consecrated concentration. But we have about 50, 60 minors. We have about 15 majors, and we just announced a new Catholic Studies major in the fall at St. Louis University. So I'm really excited to see what will happen there.
Oh, great. But the basic premise there being that we Catholics are supposed to be different. There's supposed to be something distinctive about us in every aspect of life.
Exactly. As any Muslim would think that his or her ideas are different and new and fresh, and we Catholics are, I think, sometimes too embarrassed to think that we should think differently.
Yeah. 888-318-7884, our number. Father, really, a lot of people in need of a priest. So let's go. How about we go right to the calls?
Sure.
All right, Jim in Massachusetts. You're going to start us off, Jim. Jim watching on YouTube Live. Thank you, Jim. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Hi, Jim.
My call, let me just give you a quick background. I was born Roman Catholic. My parents converted to Judaism by the urging of a Catholic priest when I was 5. Huh. So I grew up in the synagogue, had a bar mitzvah, went through everything. Then I left Judaism and became a Protestant minister. And actually, when I was doing my doctorate on divinity, I actually left and became Catholic again because I didn't like what I was seeing when I was doing exegesis of the Gospel of John and the Book of Acts. It led me back to the Catholic Church.
What a story.
Wow.
Exactly. But my question is I've been listening to Catholic Answers the last couple of months, and a lot of people have been calling in about tithing. The Jewish people obviously call it first fruits. And the only thing that I gleaned from the calls was that the church does not require people to tithe. And my question is why is that? I mean, from what I gleaned from my research and my studying, there was really nothing that Jesus emphatically said that tithing is off the table. I mean, St. Paul said obviously we didn't have to go by dietary laws anymore, but the whole concept of first fruits, giving our fruits of our labor to the one that created us first.
Right.
So can you give me a little bit more, maybe you have a little different insight on why the church has adopted that philosophy?
Well, first off, I'd say, man, Jim, thank God that you have experienced so much of his fullness and that you ended up with your face facing straight again. I mean, my golly, what a journey. Secondly, I'm a Jesuit. I've never worked in a parish, and so the tithing and taking care of the financial aspect of a parish is foreign to me. And I've never actually dealt with this question, but it is true that we never check up. Catholics are supposed to tithe, and for most people, they don't realize the word tithe comes from 10%. But the church never checks up or makes that an absolute requirement, although it's certainly part of a Catholic's responsibility to help his or her parish in those manners. But I don't know if there's any,
I know that a lot of Catholic bishops would probably appreciate it
right.
if we did take tithing more seriously. I don't know if you listened to it, Jim. This may be a part of what you were referring to, but we just did a focus episode on tithing with a canon lawyer about what's in canon law regarding tithing, and you can find that at CatholicAnswersFocus.com. Jim, I'm going to say thank you and keep moving because, and I hope that was helpful to you, but we have tons of folks on to talk with Father Macconi, and it's Ask a Priest this hour. We go now to Fairfax, Virginia. John in Fairfax, Virginia, listening to EWTN, Channel 130 on Sirius XM Satellite Radio. John, go ahead with your question for Father.
How are you doing, Father?
Hey, John.
I got an interesting software program that I really love called the Faith Database, and it's just a bottomless treasure of Catholic resources. One of the things that it has in it is a lot of the apocryphal writings, and by that I don't mean the Deuterocanonicals. I mean actual apocryphal writings. And I understand that we have gleaned some things from some of those, like the Proto-Evangelium of James, for instance.
Right.
But I understand that some of them, the way it's been explained to me, some of them are kind of, like that we can kind of glean some things from them, and then some of the apocryphal writings are just downright heretical, and we should stay away from them. And I was wondering if you could recommend a resource that could kind of give me some guidance on what are some of the apocryphal writings that I should actually read and some that I should leave alone.
That's a great question. There is no official list of what's apocryphal. We know what's canonical, but what this software might be considered apocryphal. But certainly the Proto-Evangelium of James is an important resource for the early life of Mary. We can't demand or insist that what it says there is actually true, but it's not too far off topic. It might be, right? It talks about Mary's youth. It talks about her parents. This is where we get the names Anna and Joachim. Do you remember what other books are included there?
I mean, it's got a huge list.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've just heard that some of the apocryphal writings were just downright heretical, and I was just wondering if there was any kind of a listing of, okay, these are books you should stay away from.
No, I don't think there is. I mean, so for example, in the Gospel of Peter, there's a story about little Jesus getting beaten in a game by a boy, and he takes this pile of mud and breathes into it and creates this bird that attacks the kid. I mean, things like that are clearly heretical if Jesus were ever to act uncharitably or unjustly. They're fun stories, but yeah, I wouldn't put too much into them, of course, because the church recognized very early on this does not match who Jesus Christ and who his people are.
John, I'm going to recommend, because I don't think Father will, that maybe you could grab his new book, Christ Unfurled, The First 500 Years of Jesus' Life. I'm looking on page 29 here. For some stuff that you can.
Oh, I see.
Do you know what I'm talking about? He lists some of the writings of the Apostolic Fathers there, like the Epistle of Clement of Rome, the Didache, the Epistles of Ignatius of Antioch, and some others. So you might take a look there. The book's called Christ Unfurled, and it is from Tan Books. John, I got to take a break. Are you all set with that?
Yeah, thank you so
All right,
much. I
John.
appreciate the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, God bless you, brother. We'll take a quick break. Be right back with more Ask a Priest with Father David McConey right after this.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Wings is the weekly newsletter that's packed with program info, features, and updates of all that's going on at the Global Catholic Network. Just go to EWTN.com/wings. Fill out your name and email address, and you'll start getting your wings every week. When you get yours, send it to all your friends, and they can send it to their friends. And pretty soon, we're covering the whole world with the good news about EWTN. Wings, the weekly newsletter from EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Thank you for being with us on this Thursday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are, or if you're on the other side of the date line on a Friday morning. We're happy to have you with us. Thank you for being here with us. Father David McConey is our guest. He's got a brand new book called Christ Unfurled, the First 500 Years of Jesus' Life. But I'll tell you this about Father McConey. If you want to know about St. Augustine, and even if you want to get some translations of St. Augustine, you could do a lot worse than Father McConey's work. Lots of folks on the line for Ask a Priest this hour. So I'm just going to keep going to the phones. Let's go to Florida. I'm so glad that the people in Florida are still calling after the mess that Trent and I made of the names of towns of Florida on Monday. Luca in Florida, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. You are next. Go ahead, Luca, with your question.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go and listen to that show on the app.
We just had a little trouble with the names of towns in Florida.
Okay.
A few
I
problems.
can't blame you.
Hi, Luca.
All right. Hi. So I'm interested in pursuing the priesthood, but I haven't really made any progress on that, in terms of going into the seminary or whatever. I was just wondering if you could talk about what that's like, especially at the early stages, and what your life is like and stuff like that.
Well, praise God, you're open to that voice. The first thing you might want to think about is whether you want to be a diocesan priest or to belong to a religious order. And then after that, maybe visit. You have to certainly spend time in these places. So if you're called to the diocesan seminary, the first thing you would do is contact your vocation director to your diocese. If you feel called to the Franciscans, Dominicans, maybe Jesuits, you would contact their vocation officer and make an appointment to visit. So it's usually the first original meeting is with the vocation person, whoever's representing that group. And the nice thing is, you present yourself and they help you discern. It's not just saying, I'm going to be a priest, you got to let me in. So there's a vetting, there's psychological evaluations, there's all those things. It really helps you confirm the voice of God, whether this is for or not for you.
Luca, how's
Wow,
that?
I didn't know that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
That's
thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you so much.
Blessings.
So, Father, if someone came to you and said, I'm interested in being a Jesuit, are there evenings of recollection and that kind of thing? Or is that usually what?
Sure. We have a year of candidacy. So the first thing I would do is send that young man to the vocation director, and he would talk with him. And if the next step was, then come make a come and see weekend, we call them.
Oh, come and see
From
weekend.
John 1, yeah,
Okay.
come and see.
All right. Luca, thanks very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Let's go to Midland, Texas. Ryan in Midland, our friend Ryan in Midland, Texas, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. I'm legally obliged to say new and improved. I don't know why it's a requirement. I can't say Catholic Answers Live app anymore without saying new and improved. I'm not.
that's good for people to know.
Yeah, it's good, right? Because two things about that: it is new, and it is improved.
It's better than the old and obsolete.
The old, yeah, right. The old and obsolete, exactly. Ryan, go ahead with your question for Father.
All right, Padre. I forgot to tell this to Marie earlier, but to give a little background, I was reading this blog earlier where this guy was reflecting on his experiences serving as a subdeacon for Tridentine Masses, and I was intrigued by it, but I was wondering, is it permissible or not for a layman who is or isn't an instituted acolyte to serve as a subdeacon for Tridentine Masses, even if he's not on his way to Holy Orders?
Most subdeacons in the extraordinary form are not on their way to holy orders. So I imagine it's permissible because usually the parishes that are celebrating the extraordinary form are quite clear of what the church teaches and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, right. If you're going to be celebrating the ordinary form, you're not messing around with rubrics.
Now, whether that person is technically a subdeacon or just a higher kind of acolyte, I'm not sure what the technical term would be. I'm sorry, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. I hope that's helpful to you. I'm going to go all the way up to Canada now. Anne in Canada, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. Anne, you there with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, Cy. Hi, Father.
Hi, Anne.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys because I've been listening for years now, and I actually came into the church last year.
Oh, praise God.
So thank you guys so much. I had a question. My brother had his girlfriend have an abortion a few years ago, and he told me about it recently. And I'm having a really hard time, opening my heart to forgiveness. So I was wondering if maybe you could give me some tips on what to do there.
Well, here we are just coming off Good Friday. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. I mean, this happens a lot, way too often. And when a student comes to me with this, I say, look, you're a dumb kid, and you shouldn't have done it, but you did. And so we have to entrust your child to the Father of mercies. And if you haven't been to confession, let's do that. And we have to move on. We can't ever keep someone stuck in their sins. I mean, that's never what Christ allows. And I know it's hard emotionally, and I know it's hard personally as a family member, but please pray to look at your brother through the lens of Christ, through the lens of the cross, through the lens of the own mercy showed to you.
And does that help you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Is there sorrow in that you feel cheated out of a niece or nephew? Is there sorrow that maybe you feel cheated that he didn't come to you earlier when you might have been able to help? Are there other levels of sorrow and kind of regret or derision even?
Well, I think it's both. I feel sad for him.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my husband are struggling to have a child. We've been trying for 4 years, so it's a lot harder there, too.
Sure, so that seems like a double slam, right? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, ask that little one for prayers for you and your husband.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much. Father David McConey is our guest this hour. It's Ask a Priest. You are welcome to call and ask your question. I have to tell you, virtually every line full now. As a matter of fact, Anne just left us, so one line open, 888-318-7884. Let's go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Tracy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. Tracy, go ahead with your question for Father David McConey.
Yeah, my question is. Oh, sorry, I'm in a store. I just.
That's fine.
My question is. Oh yeah, my question is. I've been a Catholic all my life, and my concern is, and I think this is the reason why. I know in my area, I don't feel that our bishops and priests are really teaching the laity they're not teaching us our faith, if that makes sense. We go to church, we do what we've always done for years and years and years, but it's never really explained to us. Do you know why that, I know every diocese is different. I know every priest and, section of the country is different in how they perceive and do things, but I just feel like I've had to do a lot of my own searching for my own, knowledge in my faith.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like the priests are doing their job and teaching us. And I think that's where I think a lot of people have left the church.
Yeah, it is true that we haven't really opened that whole treasure chest fully. But let me ask you, Tracy, what would you expect? Would you expect better homilies, nights of recollection at your parish? I mean, we have the catechism. You have so much at your fingertips in terms of a library, videos, audio. You have Catholic Answers. And I'm asking sincerely, what would you like to see different?
I just think the priest should, even if they offer like once a month to have to go through and explain the actual the mass. Why do you do things a certain way?
Yeah.
Offer classes or maybe in their weekly bulletin books that they recommend for further
Like reading groups and Bible
knowledge
studies
of-
and things.
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely, yes. I mean, I don't even know if I'd say Bible studies, because Bible studies, I think, are there,
Okay.
unless they aren't. If they're not there, then absolutely. But I just think that they're not teaching us.
Yeah. Well, the best interpretation would be priests are so busy they don't have time. But maybe if someone like you stepped forward and said, "Hey, I'd like to lead a reading group on this or that book," or something, that might be a way. Putting yourself out there. I hate to put it on you,
But Tracy, I wonder if you're. I don't know what generation you're from. I was born in 1964, and I feel like many Catholics my age, we feel like, what happened? No one ever taught us some of these basic things, and now we're well into our adult years. Our children are in their adult years, and we're thinking, what was the church doing all of that time? Do you have a similar experience, Tracy?
she sounds much younger than you. So.
Basically, yes. I'm 68. 68 is when I was born. So.
Oh, okay.
So we're
we're all in the same generation, and we were cheated. That post-Vatican II catechesis was terrible.
Yeah.
So thank God you're thirsty for it.
What? But honestly, though, I think even this generation's even more cheated. I know our parishes; they're more concerned about fundraising. I just think if the laity were fed spiritually, then the money would come. Just like Mother Angelica. That's the reason why EWTN came about.
Yeah, true.
Well, yes, but I mean, or maybe another way to think of it, Tracy, I don't know if this would be acceptable to you, is that we would be more amenable to the fundraising that has to happen if there was a greater emphasis on building up a community of faith and teaching that community. Because they do have to raise their money. I mean, they have to pay the light bills.
Well, of course, I understand that, but I feel like they're so worried about the money aspect and not really taking care of people's spiritual. And I know they're strapped because I know our groupings that we have. I mean, we have so many parishioners that are passing away. I mean, they're so busy with funerals and and a lot of their other duties that they're overwhelmed. I get that.
Tracy, I would encourage you to make an appointment with your pastor and say, hey, look, I would like to see more catechesis. Is there anything we could do? And there may not be, but you might be able to. Nothing is hurt offering a question and say, this is what we're desirous of.
Right. Tracy, thanks. Thanks very, very much. I know that there are many other people who are very sympathetic to what you have to say, and I'm sure there are many priests listening too. And they need us, laity, to come and say, okay, Father, how can we help make this happen?
Well, Catholic Answers is built on this very impulse.
Right, exactly. Right, yeah. I'm going to keep moving, Tracy, and I'm going to say thank you because I would like to get someone else in before we have to go to the hard break at the bottom of the hour because there's lots of folks that want to talk with Father.
You were born in 64, huh?
I was born in 64, yeah.
You look a lot older.
He's the worst. He's the meanest priest. I'll tell you, there's lovely priests in this world. He's the meanest priest. Ivan, or Ivan, I'm not sure how you pronounce it in Modesto, California, listening on Catholic.com. How do you say it?
Ivan works perfectly.
Ivan.
Thank you.
Great, Ivan. Go ahead.
So I've been exploring looking into the Catholic faith as of late, and you guys have been a huge part of that. So thanks for your program. My question is that the way I'm made to understand it is that they're in the priesthood and the Mass. There are certain there's a certain continuity with the Levitical priesthood and elements of the old covenant. Assuming that I'm not wrong about that as a premise, my question is why would we retain certain elements of that old Levitical priesthood and other kind of symbols and trappings of that time, and not certain other ones? For instance, the Mosaic Law or dietary restrictions, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's the newness of Christ as the new lawgiver. Think of the Transfiguration, right? He's there with Elijah and Moses. He is the new prophet. He is the new lawgiver. And his priesthood is supreme and sovereign and ultimately the only priest. And so in the order of Melchizedek, there's something new, right? This shadowy figure of the Old Testament without any lineage. That the new priesthood is something new, not based on DNA, not based on heredity, but it's also Levitical in that it offers sacrifice and restores us to satisfaction with the Father. So there is a bit of a mixture. Why that is, I would say it's Christ's own example, his own dominical example in saving some of those Jewish aspects in terms of dress, sacrifice, but also something very new in terms of a new people and a new priesthood.
What do you think, Ivan?
That's great. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thanks, Father.
Ivan, bless you.
But you're thinking about this Catholic thing, huh, Ivan?
He wasn't going to let you off the hook, Ivan.
Yeah.
All right. You want?
I mean, like coming from more of a Protestant-ish background, I guess.
Yeah.
And looking more and more into the Scripture, and well, I mean, all you guys typically have the best answers, I guess. Orthodox are good too, but I think it's very. It just seems that there's a reason why I think
I'd point you to a good study guide on the letter to the Hebrews.
Okay, and if you hang on the line, I'd like to send you, since you mentioned Scripture, and Jimmy Akin has a book called The Bible is a Catholic Book. It's just about how the Bible was put together. Maybe that'll start you, and call and we'll have more conversations. Ivan, you can hear the music, so we got to go. We'll be right back with more Ask a Priest on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
If you spend any time on Twitter, Facebook, or mainstream media, you're probably familiar with the litany of slogans that skeptics employ to rescue you from the foolish belief that God exists. The constant onslaught seems to leave people with the idea that they have no alternative but to embrace atheism. How can a Christian respond? In One Less God Than You, John DeRosa breaks down 20 of the most common atheist challenges and shows you how to craft effective answers. Atheism is more aggressive and widespread than ever. Read One Less God Than You and prepare yourself to respond with the joyful truth that God is real. To get your copy of One Less God Than You, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Next couple are good.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father David McConey, one of the world's foremost scholars of St. Augustine, is our guest this hour, a Jesuit priest and the director of the Catholic Institute.
Study Center.
Catholic Study Center. I wanted to say institute.
It's the new and improved Catholic Study Center.
That's way better than the old and obsolete Catholic Study Center at St. Louis University. Here to answer your questions. If you have a question appropriate for a priest, this hour is for you. 888-318-7884. Now we go to San Antonio, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Raul in San Antonio, thanks so much for your call. Go ahead with your question, Raul.
Hey guys, thank you for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Raul.
I was listening to this young lady on a video, and she had mentioned that the Bible was missing some verses, and I automatically thought, oh, that's got to be a Protestant deal. And she mentioned verse 17, Matthew 17, verse 21. And so I went and I looked at my Bible. I have an RSV second edition, the Catholic Answers one, I think, and Then I noticed that the number was there, but there was no verse associated to it. Well, I'm bilingual, and I looked at my Spanish Catholic Bible, and the verse was included in there. So then I went to the Douay-Rheims, the Latin version, and I noticed that there was also something there for 21, which was basically you couldn't expel the I think the apostles couldn't expel the demon because they need demons because of prayer and fasting,
Prayer
right?
and fasting, right.
But that's not included in my Catholic Bible. So I'm trying to understand why. And it's not only that verse. There's several other verses that have been omitted or what have you. And one of them I also thought was interesting was in Mark, I think. I can't remember which
You mean the
chapter,
ending?
but
Matthew 6 or Mark 16, the ending. There's 3 different endings, in fact.
Well, I need to know, is Matthew 17:21, is this some kind of conspiracy against English-speaking people? That it's in the Latin Bible, it's in the Spanish Bible, it's not in the English language Bible.
We Anglos just don't get it.
It's like, well, no, we don't need the English speakers to know about this part.
Raul, this is a great question, and it actually takes you back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries. The oldest Greek New Testaments we have, the Codex Sinaiticus and the Codex Vaticanus. There is no Matthew 17:21, and so I think it was the King James that first omitted it. So later Bibles, almost any Bible up until the early modern period, will have Matthew 17:21 about the prayer and fasting and casting out demons. But it's only in the early modern, going back, trying to see what the most authentic, earliest scriptures we have, that it's removed.
So does that make sense to you, Raul?
So you have to remember, Raul, those numbers, those chapters and verses aren't until much, much later, right? The Bible doesn't. Nobody wrote with chapter and verse in mind. So when the later editors were putting in chapter and verse, they put it in, and then people were starting to realize that, wait, this 1721 here, this actually isn't in the earliest Greek manuscripts of the Bible we have, so they removed it. But they kept the numbering as it was earlier put in.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
So basically, the further back you go, it wasn't included in there, and that's kind of what threw me off, was because when I looked at the Dewey Rhymes of the Latin version, I noticed that it was in there, which is a much older version than the edited versions that we have now, which is why it kind of drew my attention. So
Right.
why don't we have it today? Because like in Matthew, in Mark, sorry. There was the repetitive verse that that was taken out because it was the same verse 3 times. And I thought, man, what a great opportunity to tell one of my separated brother. And I said, look, you attacked me about not having repetitive prayer, but in the Bible, there's three prayers that are exactly the same, and now I've only got one.
That's good.
So it was one of those deals where I'm trying to understand why.
But if it's not in the earliest manuscripts, then that makes it suspect. But it doesn't tell us that it's not in the very earliest manuscript. We're not certain about it, but it makes it more suspect.
That's right. And in one way, this shows the Bible alone kind of spirituality. I mean, it's suspect because we don't have a consistent gathering of early texts in the New Testament.
All right, Raul, that's an interesting one. Thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Appreciate
Close
the question.
reading.
I'm going to keep moving because I got to get as many folks as I can on. We'll go back to Florida. Apparently Florida has forgiven us. We're in West Palm Beach, Florida. Oscar listening on the listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. Go ahead, Oscar, with your question for Father David McConey.
Hi, good evening. I just had a quick question. I'm trying to convert someone. They don't believe that Christ is God, just the Father of God. I use Hebrews 1. I use when Thomas says, my Lord and my God. I used before Abraham was I am. Now where he stumped me, I really didn't know how to answer him, was when he said, why did he say I'm the Son of God?
Mm-hmm. Well, because he is.
Could I just ask you something, Oscar? Did this person, are they a Jehovah's Witness? Is that what?
No, I thought he was, but he said he doesn't affiliate with any.
Okay,
church.
I got you. Okay, Father?
Oscar, if I asked you, what are you, you'd say human. If I asked you who you are, you say, I'm Oscar, I'm the son of. I mean, in one way, you could think of God as a what term. It describes the divine nature. Who is God? Well, God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The second person of the Trinity, the Son of God, is God, just as you are human, although you too are also a son of. And so if God the Father said, I am the Father, would that make him any less God? Does that make sense? I mean, these Father, Son, and Spirit, these are relationship terms that don't take away from the nature. It just shows how that nature is lived out. There are 3 persons in the Godhead. There is a begetter God, there is a begotten God, and there is a gift God between giver and receiver, the Holy Spirit, and so on. So the Son of title doesn't take away from his divinity. It just describes how that divinity is being lived out eternally.
So when he says, like, born up, does that mean, like, comes forth from? Is that basically?
That's right. That's right. He's the second person of the Trinity because he eternally is begotten from the Father. It doesn't make any less so, but it just makes him one of a receiver and begotten, and not one of the begetter or givers, if that makes sense.
Oh, thank you for your explanation.
Yeah, think of the difference between who and what. God is a what term. Son of God is a who term.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks, Oscar. Thanks very much. Our number, 888-318-7884. It's Ask a Priest this hour. Second hour, Jimmy Akin's going to be with us, and we're going to do open forum. We go now to Michael in Youngstown, Ohio, listening on WILB, Living Bread Radio. Michael, thank you so much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
Hi, Michael.
Since Father you seem to be very well versed in the early church, writing a book on it and all, and a priest. My question is about truth and love, and if you could compare, particularly for how we prepare evangelization, the pagan culture and the early Christians to today, where we have neo-pagans and a post-Christian culture. If you could give us some insight on what we might take advantage there for evangelization.
That's an astute observation, because we live in a society today where we see signs out in people's front yards, love is love. And that doesn't really tell us anything. If you're a Christian, you know what love is? Love is patient, love is kind, love never seeks itself, it never rejoices in error, 1 Corinthians 13. That because we believe in a God who has become human, has taken on flesh and particularity and can be defined and touched and understood, our understanding of love too has expectations and concrete expressions. Love isn't a feeling, it's not some ethereal kind of emotion, it's the commitment to another's eternal well-being. And so you're right, we live in a neo-pagan society in which just because something happens to be called love, it is somehow, what would you say, beyond reproach. But it's not love. Love is when you spend your entire being trying to get another to eternal joy, eternal happiness. Otherwise, it's an impostor of love, like lust or pride or use. And this is where I think we Christians need to stand up and say, look, no, love has a particular and concrete expression.
Does that address your question, Michael?
I think it does in terms of charity, but then truth is the other part, because neo-pagans understood truth better than we do today. Now it's relevant.
Yeah, that's right. Relative. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And the irony is every truth is relative except that expression, truth is relative. There's a truth.
Yeah,
right. So...
But I wonder if, in your view, in some ways it seems like we're obviously so much better off than the Christians who faced the first pagan emperors, for example, because we're not being fed to the lions and that kind of thing. But it also seems like we're worse off as in evangelization, because a lot of people think that I've heard the gospel and I've already rejected that. They think that they have. And maybe some
They
have.
think they've heard the gospel. They really haven't.
Yeah, right. They think, okay, I know what you Christians are about. Forget it. I don't want that. So it just seems like we're in a harder position with the modern return of paganism than the original Christians were with the first paganism. I wonder what you think about that.
Well, see, in the early church, the pagans had an understanding of the divine. Their world teemed with gods and goddesses, with spirits and angels, and right, they knew they weren't the height of reality. Where today neo-pagans think, no, I am the absolute. I am the God. I am the sovereign.
Right. Michael, thank you so much for that question. We've got a bunch more, actually. Father David McConey, our guest, Ask a Priest, and we'll be right back with more of that right after this.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
When I get up in the morning, I turn the radio on, listen to the Mass, listen to the early shows. When I transition to my automobile, I flip it over on my iPhone, then start listening to it on the web. And then when I get into the car, I actually listen to it all the way to work. When I get to work, I actually even listen to it online while I'm sitting at my desk. I just love EWTN.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Just delighted to have Father David McConey here with us, a Jesuit priest from St. Louis. Now, how many provinces of Jesuits are there in the U.S.?
There are now 4.
There are 4? So
Yeah.
which one are you there in St. Louis?
It's the southern, what would you say? It's the UCS, the southern province, basically from St. Louis down to Florida, over through Texas.
And out of the 4 provinces, which is the best one, would you say?
Well, we don't do that.
Oh,
no,
you don't?
We don't
Really?
do that. No, we just know we're better than all the rest.
As long as you know that you're the best. All right. I'm going to read a question to you that was given to us by an anonymous caller off air, Father.
Mm-hmm.
Is a person who has an eating disorder in a state of mortal sin every time they misuse food or their body?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, of course not. Of course not. There are sins in which we intentionally misuse the goods of creation, and then there are illnesses in which we cannot help ourselves. And so, no, please don't think you're in a state of mortal sin at all. And seek out the counseling and therapy that might help alleviate this sickness, and prayers for you. That's a sad question.
And thank you. And if you ever need a clarification of that, you're very welcome to call back another time.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Atlanta, Georgia now, watching on YouTube Live. Abraham in Atlanta, Georgia. Go ahead with your question for Father David McConey.
Hello.
Hi, Abraham.
Yeah, I have a question about dating after divorce. Is it okay? Because I know you can't have sex, but would dating without sex be okay?
Well, it depends what you mean by dating, I guess. I guess a divorced person seeking an annulment who isn't able to marry certainly is entitled to have a friendship with a person of the opposite sex. But if the dating is leading toward marriage, which I think what the definition of dating is, I would say to be very careful, to go very slowly and get that annulment if that's in God's will for you, and watch how one leads another on, because you can very easily say, well, you know what, the annulment's not through, I'm going to get married by the justice of the peace now, and the Catholic faith can be put aside very quickly. So I'd be very careful.
What do you think, Abraham?
Yeah, but let's if I couldn't get the annulment, would it still be fine? You know, as long as we don't have any sexual relations.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's the guy's way of thinking of it. I mean, and the woman's wondering why you're so emotionally connected that things can't go further. Dating in a state unable to get married, I think, is a bit unfair. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have occasional meals and movies, those kinds of things. You just need to play it prudently. I don't think there's one set answer. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily a sin, but I would say it can easily morph into leaving one's faith for the sake of marriage in another form.
Abraham, thank you very much for the call. I hope that was helpful to you. I'm going to go now to Salt and Light Radio in Idaho. Alma, listening on Salt and Light Radio. You are next. Alma, go ahead with your question for Father David McConey.
Good afternoon, Father.
Hi, Alma. What a beautiful name.
Hi. Thank you. I just have a question. So, like, if you're not in a state of grace, and you're attending Mass, but you just couldn't make it to confession on time, can you still do a spiritual communion, or will that still be considered?
No, by all means do. The Lord understands. You can't make it to communion, He understands. You'll get when you can. And in the meantime, I think it's a very humbling, very sanctifying act to say, Lord, I know I can't come to you right now, and you can't come to me right now, but in this spiritual communion we can meet. And when I am able to get to the sacrament of reconciliation, I will at first attempt. So yes, I would encourage you to, or anyone.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you, Alma.
Thank you, Alma. What a beautiful question, actually. Thank you very, very much. Going to Massachusetts, back to civilization. I don't know if you know this, but Massachusetts is the center of civilization.
I've never been.
You've never been to Massachusetts?
Not to the civilized part, no.
Oh.
Just to Boston.
Boston is the hub of civilization. What are you talking about, Father? Watch it on YouTube Live. John, go ahead with your question for Father.
Hi, John.
Hi, Father. My question may be a little bit lengthy, but I request that you just hear me out. It's a bit emotional. My brother committed suicide about a year ago.
I'm sorry.
However, from the time he was at college, for the next about 10 years of his life, he suffered a lot with diabolical issues. I come from Africa, and back there we consulted with our bishop who led us to an exorcist. And they tried several times to pray for him, but the diabolical influences would never go. And through the exorcist, we were made to learn that, issues that happened with him at college through his friends, they had kind of done a sacrifice for him of sorts, and he wasn't aware of it. So pretty much that's what was really messing him up. So eventually last year, around December, he committed suicide.
Sorry.
And in my community, even the parish priest never turned up for his burial, so he was literally buried like somebody who don't belong to nobody. So my entire family was devastated, given the fact that, we were all trying, at least most of the people in the community knew he was not in the best of his state of mind, being a college graduate, and all the issues that he's faced. I guess now my question is, my catechist training as a Catholic tells me that suicide is a very bad thing, and actually that's what we were told was the reason they never gave him a Holy Mass. And some Pentecostal person just came out and tried to do something a little bit. Now, as I pray for my brother, which I decided to do every day of my life,
of course.
How does my Catholic teaching guide me, the church on earth, in terms of how does God look at this kind of situation where he took his life, but it was not out of choice?
Exactly.
At times I get into issues with Pentecostal people, and they're like, Judas Iscariot only became evil because Jesus ate with him. The devil entered him right there.
No. Listen, your brother didn't commit suicide. He succumbed to a sickness, and that's a big difference. And I, too, have experienced this with a brother and a nephew. And we really have to say, look, the ultimate word is God's mercy. This is a sickness. This is an illness that rarely does someone freely choose it. And you can only sin if you're free, if you understand what you're doing. And I doubt your brother, and I doubt my brother, knew what they were doing fully. They were sick, they were sad, they were in pain, and they just mistook this action for a remedy. And I think God understands. And I think if the gospel is consistent with anything, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. And who's more brokenhearted than one who wants to take his or her own life? So I would say keep praying and trust that you're going to see your brother in heaven.
Amen. Thanks a lot. I really needed that because I need to call my parents now and let them know.
Please, yes.
My mom only had 2 kids, me and her, me and him, and I'm in the U.S. She's all alone in Africa, and
your poor mother.
It was the only thing keeping her together.
Yeah, so, exactly. Again,
it felt like the church never stood with her for over 10 years of pain, that they couldn't even say Holy Mass for her son.
No, that's wrong. You know what? I will say my Mass tomorrow for your brother. What's his name?
His name is Ivan.
Ivan. All right. The Mass tomorrow for Ivan, April 16th, in a hotel room in San Diego.
Thanks a lot, Father. May you be blessed. I really
bless you,
appreciate
John.
that.
I'll see you in heaven, too.
John,
thank you. Hope to meet there.
I have not read this book, but I've heard very, very many wonderful things about it. I think our own bishop in San Diego wrote the foreword to it. It's called When a Loved One Dies by Suicide: Comfort, Hope, and Healing for Grieving Catholics. So you might look for that book if you're looking for that kind of reading. It might help you. It might help your mom. But many prayers for you and your brother Ivan and for your mother. And thank you so much for your call.
What's the name of the book again?
It's called When a Loved One Dies by Suicide: Comfort, Hope, and Healing for Grieving Catholics.
And who wrote it?
It's a bunch of article or shorter pieces by different Catholic mental health ministers and our own bishop here in San Diego, Bishop John Dolan, who lost loved ones to suicide. I think he is one of the editors, but I know he wrote the foreword to it. And if it's he's a wonderful man, and so if he's any indication, I think it's a book that I could highly recommend to you. When a Loved One Dies by Suicide.
By suicide. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
God bless you, brother. Thank you very much for the call.
God bless you.
Let's see who else we have on the line. I think we have Felix in Washington State watching on YouTube Live, unless he's living in ancient Rome, in which case his name is Felix. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Or a city in Florida.
Don't get me on the cities in Florida, man. I'm already in trouble with Florida.
Hi, Felix.
Hi, Felix.
Hi.
Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so I'm new to the Catholic faith. I haven't become a Catholic yet. I've started the RCIA process.
Wonderful.
I come from a Protestant background. I'm born again. And the question I had was, like, I'm kind of worried that, like, if I don't become a Catholic, like, soon, if I die, like, I might not make it to heaven, though. But I profess Christ as my Savior.
Amen.
And I go to Mass on a weekly basis on Sundays when I'm able to. And I don't miss Mass. I take it very seriously. So, but I'm not yet Catholic, though.
All right. When you become Catholic, when I'm able to is going to drop out of your vocabulary. You got to get every Sunday.
Yeah.
No, Felix, you obviously have a love for Jesus. And in the early church, there were different baptisms. There was baptism by water, of course. There was baptism by blood. And there's baptism by desire. And I would say you're already a Catholic by desire. Just get through this RCIA program, and you'll be welcomed and received fully when that day comes. But I wouldn't worry right now. You're probably living a more Catholic life than many cultural Catholics.
Does that ease your mind, Felix?
Yeah, and I read my Bible every day, and then God keeps His promises, so that relieves me.
Very good. Okay,
Amen.
I'm good. Yeah, have no anxiety about it, Felix. Thanks very much. Boy, we got time. You're really good. We've talked to a lot of people today.
It's great.
I appreciate that.
You have a very learned audience with good questions and insights.
I know. I know. That's why I never take questions. I always let the other because I don't. I'm not prepared for that. Camille, thanks, Felix. Camille in Quebec, Canada, listening to EWTN, channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Camille, go ahead with your question for Father.
Yeah, Father, hi. Can you hear me?
Oui, Camille.
Oui.
Yeah. Oui. Okay. Thank you. I got a difficult question a little bit. I come in from a very Catholic background, and my daughter came out a while back with a different sexual orientation. It was a bit hard, but obviously the initial reaction, instead of anger, we continued to love her and support her. However, I made it clear that I cannot, we're going to continue to love her, but we're going to defer on that topic because my background, my belief does not allow us to accept this in a matter to be open about it and as everything is normal. And my question is it's a struggle sometimes. You go through the anger and frustration, but then you go back to love and mercy.
Right.
Is there something more that we can do? And because, my concern is, this is I think it's a mortal sin. That how do you encourage someone to kind of, you can, kind of a loss. Like, how do we deal with this kind of a situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you're dealing with the best you can, knowing that you have to love her and you can't objectify her, kick her out. And I think there's a certain discipline in saying, look, we're not going to always talk about this. You are more than this orientation. And don't forget, I think the Catholic Church is very wise in saying the orientation is not sinful. It may be a cross. It may be something that people have to bear. It's the non-procreative genital acts where sin and vice come in. And I think that's a very wise hedge. And so I would say, look, as long as your daughter isn't engaging in this, isn't seeking marriage in the civil way, keep her ever close to you with a tenderness and a mercy that only a father can show.
Yeah, and that's what we kind of left it. That right now she's not living it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an orientation. But she started to ask questions like, "What if I get married?" I said, "Well, it's a different path, and I will probably not even be able to attend because if my priest or my Catholic faith prohibit me from attending a civil union, even though it's just a civil union, I won't be able to do it." So I'm very honest about it with her.
Yeah, and different parents have taken different tacks on this, but if that's your conscience, then you have to follow that too.
Camille, thank you very, very much. You can hear the music. We have to go. Next hour, Jimmy Akin will be with us. We'll do open forum with Jimmy Akin next hour. Your calls are welcome. Father David McConey has been our guest. Christ Unfurled, the first 500 years of Jesus' life is his newest book. It's from Tan Press. Father, may we have your blessing before we go.
Through the intercession of Saint Cyril, may Almighty God bless you all, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Father. Hang on, Jimmy Akin coming. If you're on the line and you want to ask your question of Jimmy, stay on the line. If you haven't dialed yet, the number is 888-318-7884. Hello and welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Thanks for being with us. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest this hour, Jimmy Akin, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, and it's open forum. You can ask whatever you like. 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. Hi, Jimmy Akin.
Hi, Cy Kellett. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you. Also proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. What's tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow. I think I remember. This is
Okay. Let's see how well you do.
This is a best of tomorrow. You can do a best of,
so to speak.
Oh.
Not exactly. A best of is typically just a replay of stuff you've already seen, like or heard,
like
a clip
right.
show,
right? Like a bottle episode.
Well, a bottle episode and a clip show are two different things.
Oh, okay.
We can talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
This is an updates show, so we've covered a lot of mysteries. It's our 150th episode. So it's a kind of anniversary episode. We've covered lots of mysteries before, and there's always new stuff coming out. There's new stuff to learn. There's new research being done. And so we're going to, for our 150th episode, update people on what we've learned since the original episodes aired. So we're going to be talking about updates on Bigfoot, updates on the Great Pyramid of Egypt, updates on the JFK assassination, updates on UFOs, and all kinds of other things.
Oh, very, very good. Okay, so that's better than a clip show. All right, so
Yeah.
but I only know about a bottle episode because of
I showed you one?
the one on
Community.
Community, yeah, the TV show Community. So did a thing about a bottle episode. It was like a TV show that was aware that it was a TV show, but only a little bit aware.
Sort of.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very clever.
Yeah. So Community is a sitcom that's very meta about a community college, and one of the students at the community college is convinced he's on a TV show, and he views everything in his life in terms of it being on a TV show. And in one episode, he's afraid they're going to be doing a bottle episode. A bottle episode is a term that they use in the television industry to refer to an episode that takes place entirely on existing sets. This is a cost-saving measure, so they don't have to build new sets or go on location. You just keep all your characters on a main set. You saw this a lot in Star Trek, the original series, where you'd have episodes set entirely on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
So those are bottle episodes because it's like a ship in a bottle. And they did indeed do a Community episode that was a bottle episode where the whole thing is set in the school library on one set.
Yeah.
They also did a clip show. A clip show is where you take clips from previous episodes and you have characters sitting around remembering events from previous episodes, sometimes with a little lame plot to string the clips together. This is another cost-saving measure in the television industry, but since Community is so meta, when they did their clip show, all of the clips were footage we had never seen before. So they're remembering events we've never seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it from Happy Days. Every year, Happy Days would do at least one clip show where we're all sitting around. Remember the time that Richie, and then something like, I guess that saves a lot of money, and you get another program out of it.
Yeah, and it's inferior television.
Yeah,
unless it's all new clips.
But this is not a bottle episode. It is when Jimmy Akin's here. This is not a bottle. This is top flight stuff. Your calls welcome. 888-318-7884. We'll start in Washington State, watching on YouTube Live. Isaac, go ahead with your question for Jimmy Akin. You know what? You're gonna have to push the button for me. There's something wrong over here. All right, Isaac, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I've got a question. So I'm a college student right now, and a lot of my peers are very excited about the COVID vaccine, and I understand that, but I'm also a little. I'm also worried because I'm not entirely. I know there's a lot of debate about the morality of it and of if it's safe long term. It's kind of a scary idea about the long term effects. So I'm not really sure how to think about it well, and I'm wondering if I could maybe get some data from that.
Okay, so are you asking about it from a moral point of view or a scientific safety point of view, or both?
I'm both.
Okay. So let's deal with the scientific question first. Now, this is a matter that doesn't really engage church teaching. Whether a vaccine is safe and effective is something that has to be judged scientifically. And because the internet is the internet, there are always going to be people on, proclaiming everything about the vaccine. You'll find some people who will say it's super effective. You'll find other people say it's not effective at all. You'll find some people who will say it's safe, totally. You'll find other people saying it's totally unsafe. And so you have to be careful when you're on the internet and, use critical thinking and identify reliable sources and cross-examine what those sources are saying. Now, I'm not a medical expert, but I can tell you based on my research, the conclusions that I've come to, it looks like the vaccines that have currently been approved for use are, in the main, quite effective. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, for example, have efficacies of like 95% in preventing infections and even greater efficacy in preventing death. So that's very effective. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a little more iffy. Its effectiveness is not quite as high or has not been measured as being quite as high, but it also was tested in a different and much more difficult area. Some of the testing, for example, was done in South Africa during the middle of a COVID surge. And, that can affect the results you get if you're in the middle of a surge. In terms of safety, the history of vaccines is if there are problems, they almost always emerge quickly after a vaccine is given. So you would expect, if there's going to be a problem, you would expect 90+% of the problems to occur within minutes. And that's why they have people stick around. After they give them the vaccine, they'll have them stick around for 15 minutes or 30 minutes to see if there's going to be an allergic reaction. Once you get past that 15 to 30 minute mark, it starts dropping off, the chance of an adverse reaction. Within a few hours, it's even less likely. Within a few days, it's even less likely. And as you move out into months and years, the chance of an adverse reaction developing is virtually nil. If this vaccine were different than that, and we've already had like 6 months worth of experience with this vaccine, if this vaccine didn't fit that pattern, it would be unprecedented in the history of medicine. You just don't see things cropping up years later. And so with this, sort of vaccine. And so given that we've already had 6 months with it, we have a pretty good idea of the shape of the safety curve. And the safety curve is good. Now, there are adverse reactions. There are people who have allergic reactions. That's rare, but it can happen. And they have ways of treating people when it does happen. So if you get a vaccine and you're in your waiting period for 15 or 30 minutes afterwards and you have an allergic reaction, they've got the workers there trained to deal with that. So they can, give you adrenaline or whatever it may be that you need to help deal with the allergic reaction, or antihistamines, things like that. Longer term, the chances of something happening drop off even more. Recently, there has been some notice of blood clotting in the case of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And there have been like 6 cases of that in the United States out of 6 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So the chances of something like that happening are like 1 in a million. And so you have to make a judgment. What is going to suit your interests better? In this life, we can't avoid all risk. And in fact, if you try to avoid the risk of one thing, you end up accumulating risk for other things. If you are really worried about, well, maybe I would have one of these 1 in a million reactions. Okay, but then you don't get the benefit of the added immunity. that you could get to COVID. And so as a result, you have to make a trade-off and say, well, what's more valuable to me given what's likely to happen? The benefit of having the vaccine and the probable immunity it's going to give me, or the chance of one of these 1 in a million reactions. And that's a judgment that each person needs to make for themselves. In terms of the moral aspect of the question, this is something that the Holy See has addressed. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith released a document that was approved by Pope Francis that took the standard principles that have been used in evaluating the morality of vaccines for years and applied them to the current COVID vaccines and said, well, some of these vaccines were developed in ways that were ethically compromised, and Catholics should protest that. And in fact, there are there are sample form letters that have been written. The USCCB, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, has sample letters on their website that you can get and then, mail off to medical researchers and say, we don't want this kind of thing being done in the future. However, the mere fact that they ethically compromised this stuff to a degree does not mean it can never be used, because every time you interact with other human beings, you're interacting with sinners, and some of those people's actions are tainted by sin. They're ethically compromised, but that doesn't mean you never have anything to do with another person. And so in the judgment of the Holy See, it is legitimate for Catholics to be able to receive the vaccine. That is a moral choice. We need to do what we can to prevent immoral research techniques from being used in the future, but that does not mean that we have to abstain from this vaccine or other vaccines that have been developed using similar techniques, when there are many of them.
Isaac, thank you very much. We're going to head to a break. It's Open Forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. 888-318-7884 is our number.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
He is honored by the Church as a saint with the title of the Angelic Doctor.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
St. Thomas Aquinas wrote a basic textbook for young theology students that became the Church's most famous guide to the faith, the Summa Theologica. It helped him earn the title Doctor of the Church. He died in 1274.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. My good friend Erica Olson here visiting. Hi, Erica.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really good. Father David McConey did a very fine retreat yesterday, didn't he?
He did. Oh my gosh.
Come out of there feeling...
Can I tell you, I cried like 4 times yesterday.
Really?
All through the retreat, yeah.
And not because it was bad.
No, it was just so filling.
Yeah, he does a beautiful job.
He does a beautiful job. It just filled me. It's like, I didn't know how much I needed a spiritual retreat.
Oh, isn't that something?
Myself,
yeah, right.
Until
right.
I was like in the moment and I was there, and it just blew me away.
Yeah.
So it's a coincidence that you talk about the retreat, that you ask me about the retreat, because I'm here to talk about Society 315.
Yes.
Our new club for donors. And we have a special perk coming up for donors. So if you join Society 315, this is an exclusive perk for members. So you're going to want to join. We've filmed this staff retreat. It was exclusive to the staff. There's no other place that you're going to find these talks, but we're going to send you the videos.
Oh, we're going to share them.
We're going to share them with members.
What if they're already a member of Society? Like,
if you're already a member, you're going to get these videos.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I want to show them to my wife.
But if you want to get these videos and you're not a member yet, you're going to want to join.
So you go
in the next week or so.
CA Society 315.
CASociety315.com.
Yep.
To join. All the details are there about membership. If you're already a donor, This is the Society 315
You don't
is
have to
for
become a new donor.
monthly online donors.
Yeah.
So this is an exclusive club for monthly online donors. If you are already a monthly online donor, you don't have to resubscribe or, give another donation. All you have to do is contact us at society315@catholic.com. That's our email,
Yeah.
society315@catholic.com. And talk to or send us an email saying you're already a donor, you want to join the society. We'll get you hooked up, and you will also qualify for those talks. Details about what membership is and how you join are on the website. So go check that out before asking us questions. There's all the details on there.
CASociety315.com.
CASociety315.com. When you join, you're going to get an exclusive welcome membership box that includes this T-shirt that I'm wearing with our exclusive
But it'll be
society
your own.
logo.
It won't be.
It won't be my used one. No, mine's a little bit
You sure?
smelly. But
Well, you cried 4 times yesterday.
I did. It was very emotional.
I don't know why that would make it smelly, but all right. But I thought, what a great idea that we want to have this society where people are more intimately connected, really, with what we do here. And Chris Check, our president, gets these wonderful retreat leaders. Just let people be part of our retreat.
Yeah. And well, the retreat was led by Father David McConey, who was just your guest, right?
Yeah,
on the
right.
first hour.
Yeah.
So if you loved him on that first
Oh,
hour.
no, he was terrible.
Was he terrible? He's never terrible.
No,
I
he
don't
was
believe
good.
you because everything he does is just outstanding. So if you liked him in the first hour, if you've heard him before, you're going to get a quality series of talks. It's 3 talks for our retreat. You're going to get all 3 videos if you join the society in the next week or so. We give out perks like this to society members on a pretty regular basis. This is exclusive content that's only going out to members. There's also exclusive member benefits that you get at our conferences. For instance, we're going to be holding socials for our members. So there's a lot of ongoing benefits that you're going to be able to partake in if you become a member. Why
Don't
are
say
you
conference.
laughing? I'm not allowed to talk about the conference.
You're not supposed to
right
talk
now.
about the conference because we don't know if we can have it.
I know. I told you.
CASociety315.com.
We're hopeful. Yes.
And Erica Olson, thanks for coming in and talking about us. Erica is I'm sorry, I was trying to say 2 things at once. Erica is the events coordinator here at Catholic Answers. But
that's right.
You've taken on a whole bunch of other stuff since.
I have, which is
we
why I'm
ain't got
talking to you about
events.
society.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you, Cy.
CASociety315.com. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. 888-318-7884 is the number. And we go now to an anonymous caller. Anonymous, thank you for waiting patiently. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy. Anonymous?
I guess, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're there. Go ahead.
Oh, good. I guess the heart of my question would be, how can I get an appointment with my bishop? Because I think that might be the solution to my dilemma. So first, the problem is that I got married in another country, and that country has a law that you have to have a civil marriage before you can get married in the Catholic Church. And what happened was they didn't want to marry us because my husband isn't a Catholic, and I told them you can't make up your own rules, but they did. This is in another country.
So, Anonymous, just real quick, you yourself are a Catholic?
Yeah, my husband's not. And
Okay.
Anyway, he since then has decided he doesn't want to marry me in the church. And I always thought that we were going to get married in the church. And I wanted to ask if I could. I wanted to see if I could have an appointment with the bishop, because then I could maybe get it like a dispensation for going to Holy Communion.
Well, let's ask Jimmy about that. Is that how you would deal with this, Jimmy, or how would you deal with this situation?
So if you're living with someone and you're you being a Catholic, you need to be married to the person either in the Catholic Church or have a dispensation in order to have a non-Catholic marriage. If that hasn't happened, then you are not able to live in a normal married fashion with this person because you're only married in the eyes of the civil law. And if you're not living as brother and sister, then you shouldn't be receiving communion. And the solution would be to address the marital situation. This would be the obvious and best solution. There are a number of ways of doing it. Assuming that you love this man and want to remain married to him, you could approach him and say, look, I know that this may not mean much to you, but it really means a lot to me to be able to be married in the church. And I'd ask you, if you love me, to be open to getting married in the Catholic Church. It doesn't mean you're a Catholic. It doesn't mean you approve of the Catholic Church. It's something that you would be doing because of your love for me and my need to honor my conscience by getting married in my church. Another possibility would be to get a new marriage, but one that you have a dispensation for. So you could say, look, if he doesn't agree to the first proposal that I just made, you could say, well, then can we have a non-Catholic wedding? Can we reaffirm our love for each other, let's say, in a Protestant church? And I can get a dispensation in order to do that. And then that would be a possibility, and that would also take care of the situation. In most of these kind of situations, you wouldn't need to involve the bishop personally. Instead, you would just talk to your local pastor, and he would be the one typically, or someone at the parish that he assigns to do this would, be the one to file the paperwork with the diocese and help get the paperwork filed and things like that. So normally you'd work through him. If it became necessary to involve the bishop, that can certainly happen. And one can always, call the chancery and ask for an appointment with a bishop, but typically this wouldn't be handled in that way. It would be handled in one of the two ways I just mentioned.
Anonymous, I hope that is helpful to you. Thank you so much for that call. We have lots of folks on the line. I'm going to keep going. Jimmy Akin, our guest, and we go now to Canada. Paolo in Canada, listening on the EWTN app. Paolo, go ahead with your question.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, Jimmy, since you said that you like weird questions, I heard you say that several weeks ago. Here's one of them.
Okay.
If ever there would be a research station on Mars, I don't want to go so far as a human settlement, but still, what calendar would they use then to celebrate church days? Because the Martian Sol is about half an hour longer than the Earth Day, and which means the calendars would soon be out of sync. And so, how do you know how to celebrate Christmas or Easter or any other planet?
I think it's a great question, Paolo. Jimmy, what are we going to do?
This is one I've thought about before and addressed before, so it's one that doesn't have a single answer. Now, if we have an initial human presence on Mars, just like we have had on the moon and on the International Space Station and on Skylab and things like that, initial human colonies or initial human off-world presences are still very dependent on Earth. And so, at least in the beginning, they would continue to use the standard Earth calendar. And they would be synced to a 24-hour day. It's something, we see that when we send astronauts to the moon. We've seen that when we send astronauts to the International Space Station. They might use something like Greenwich Mean Time to govern, the local time, or they might use the time zone of the area they launched from or something like that. Now, once you have people on Mars, it's going to be a little bit different because you have a slightly different length of the day. And so people would begin accommodating themselves to the different length of the day, but you would still probably have record keeping and stuff like that done in sync with Earth. So the difference in the length of the Martian day is not so dramatically different that it would force people into a radically different schedule. The Martian days would progressively, you might have local Martian time that is different than Earth time, that's calibrated based on the local sunrise and sunset. But then in terms of what day is it on the calendar, that's probably still going to be judged by the Gregorian calendar in use on Earth. And so Christians on Mars would be celebrating Christmas twice a year, potentially, per Martian year, because the Martian year is twice as long. Further out, a different calendar might develop, but that's what would happen in the beginning.
Paulo, thank you very much for that weird question for Jimmy Akin. We'll be right back with more Open Forum for Jimmy Akin. Our number, 888-318-7884.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, is one of the most courageous leaders in the church, known for his outspoken support of unborn life, Orthodox faith and morals, and reforming Catholic institutions. In his groundbreaking new book, Light and Leaven, he offers a forthright perspective on the state of the church today and calls on the lay faithful to meet its challenges boldly. Touching on topics including parish renewal, the centrality of the Eucharist, the need for prayer and silence in a noisy and distracted age, and the battle between good and evil in the church and world, Bishop Strickland's wise insights and evident love for souls will inspire and edify you. To order your copy of Light and Leaven, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Thanks, Sarah. A little bit of groovy music. Always makes me feel good. Always makes me feel good. Jimmy Akin, groovy music, Open Forum. Those three things together make me feel good. Thanks for playing that, Sarah. It makes me miss Nick a little less. Jimmy Akin, our guest, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. You can call and ask him whatever you like, 888-318-7884. Lisa in Pennsylvania, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. You are next, Lisa. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you for taking my phone call. My question is, how does one, I was listening to a program when they talked about the spiritual works of mercy, one of them being admonish the sinner. How does one do that without sounding rude or offending the person, but expressing concern? The example I have are twofold. One was a family member who, both baptized Catholics, one had been previously married, and they got married outside of the church because the annulment process hadn't started. They had spoken to priests. I don't know if the priest had, that was interesting for me to hear, that the priest can file the paperwork with the bishop. I do not know if they did that, but I expressed surprise that they were proceeding in that direction, and that did not go over very well. And then more recently, I have a friend who's one of their children, adult children, is married two baptized, married outside of the church, and more recently want to have children. They've been married for a few years, so they talked to a priest and they said, "Oh, that's not a problem. We will convalidate the marriage." To my knowledge, she did not share that they said, "Well, now they need to live as brother and sister." Is that any of my business? Am I supposed to say something, or?
Yeah. Since it's a work of mercy to admonish the sinner. Yeah. So these are tough ones to decide.
It depends on your relationship with the person. We have different levels of responsibility to different people, and it also depends on our station in life. A priest, for example, has more of a responsibility to admonish the sinner than an ordinary layperson does. An ordinary layperson has more of a responsibility to admonish a sinner if they are responsible for that person in some way. Like a parent with a child has more responsibility to correct the child's behavior than just about anybody else would. And so when you're dealing with a situation like this, you have to think about a variety of factors, including, who am I? How well will I be able to do this? And how will the person respond? And what is my relationship to this person? And there's no one-size-fits-all answer here. It is a judgment call that involves the exercise of prudential judgment. And so the thing to do is think about the situation. In terms of responsibility, think about who you are, who the other person is, and the kind of relationship you have. But then also think about the practicalities of the situation. Will you be able to communicate with the person in a way that is likely to help them grow closer to God? Or would they react in such a way that attempting to communicate with them about this matter would push them further away from God? And that is something that's going to depend on your knowledge of them and your knowledge of yourself and how the two of you relate and communicate. And again, it involves a prudential judgment call that one just has to think about and meditate about and pray about, and then make the best decision you can and trust God with the results. So there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. In terms of how to communicate these things in a way that is more productive and less off-putting, it's often good to, number one, rehearse it all in your head ahead of time and think through, well, if I say it this way, how will they react? If I say it that way, how will they react? But it's good to try to maintain a helpful tone and to present the positives of how it will help this person in order to do what they need to do, what the benefits are of taking care of their marital situation, for example, or whatever the particular case may be, because ultimately God gives us his law for our happiness. That's the ultimate reason for the law. It's not that God is just a control freak and wants to control our behavior. God gives us his law because by obeying his law, we will be happier. The law that he gives us is based on human nature. And you can see that, for example, in the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, you don't lie, things like that. Imagine how much better the world would be if nobody ever killed, lied, or committed adultery. People would be a lot happier, and that's the ultimate function of the law. It's not to kill people's fun or limit their freedom. It's to unlock their ability to flourish and be happy by living in accord with human nature. And so to the extent you can, you want to present the positive side of the situation. Now, that doesn't mean that you never discuss the negative side, because if you're living out of harmony with human nature, that's going to cause problems. That's going to cause unhappiness. And sometimes warning people about the problems they're going to encounter, including in the next life. Because if you live this life turning your back on God and the law he built into your nature, then you're making a decision against God, and that's going to haunt you, because if you've said, I don't want to have anything to do with God and his life, or his law in this life, well, God's not going to force himself on you in the next. He's going to respect your decision to not be with him. And so there are eternal consequences to the actions we have in this life. It's usually not the most productive strategy to begin by talking about those, but it can be necessary at times to go exactly there. So once again, it's a matter of prudence, but you think about it, you pray about it, you game it out in your head to figure out what's the most productive strategy going to be, how can I best help this person, and then you make your best judgment call and trust God with the results.
Thanks, Lisa. I hope that was helpful to you. Hey, we got a line open, 888-318-7884. Jimmy Akin is our guest. He's senior apologist here at Catholic Answers. Actually, a couple lines open now. So we don't usually see that when Jimmy's here. So I'm just telling you that so you can dial if you've got a question you've been saving up to ask Jimmy sometime. Now's your chance. 888-318-7884. Let's go to Wendy in St. Paul, Minnesota, watching on Facebook Live. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Go ahead with your question
Good,
for Jimmy.
Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to.
My question concerns Matthew 6:6 and a little bit of the backstory. I grew up Protestant, and I would ask my father why we didn't go to church. And he would always throw Matthew 6:6 at me. We don't have to go to church. All you have to do is go into your closet and pray, and that's worship. So I became a Catholic 22 years ago, and throughout the years, every once in a while, I'll ask him to come to church just to kind of show him the Catholic Church, and he throws this at me every single time. And I'm curious what response I could give him to refute this, to get him to maybe be open to coming to church and getting him in there.
Okay. Well, in order, so how you put it across to your dad is going to depend on your relationship with him and what he'll respond to. You know him better than I do, so you have to make that determination for yourself. But in terms of the biblical data, if he's giving you a Bible verse to justify not going to church, then it would be logical to give him Bible verses that do justify going to church. And there are Bible verses that do that. An example is found in Hebrews chapter 10, leading up to verse 25, which is the kind of the key verse. But if you back up a couple of verses to get it in context, the author is writing, and he says, "Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir one another up to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some." And so we've got a direct exhortation here to not neglect to meet together. And some people do that, the author acknowledges, but he says we shouldn't do that. We should not neglect to meet together. Instead, we need to meet together to stir one another as Christians up to love and good works. And so he's obviously not talking here about meeting together as families, because families always meet together. You don't need to exhort people to go home at the end of the day. He's talking in a context about meeting together as Christians. And so that's an example of a Bible passage that supports meeting together in church. There also are passages that talk about things like respect those who are over you in the Lord. And that implies there is a structure to Christ's church. There are some people who have pastoral care of other people. That's why they're called pastors. Shepherds is, the meaning of that term. And that implies that some are shepherds and some are sheep. And it's not right for the sheep to just go off on their own and say, well, I don't need to be part of the flock. I don't need a shepherd. I don't need any kind of guidance. I'm just going to go pray in my closet. So these exhortations to respect those who are over you in the Lord indicates that there is a structure to the church, that God meant his people to be structured with a hierarchy in that way, and that we're not meant to just go off on our own. Another passage that you might want to look at that makes this point and there's actually a couple. One of them is Romans 12. The other is 1 Corinthians 12 through 14, where Paul talks about the church as the body of Christ and how each member of the body of Christ has a gift that is given for the benefit of everybody. And if you are just staying in your closet and praying, then you are not using your gift to help other people, and you're not receiving the benefit of their gifts. So you're depriving yourself and other people of the benefit that the Holy Spirit meant you to have by living the Christian life and giving you and other members of the Christian community spiritual gifts.
Wendy, I think that's an awful lot to chew on. I hope that will be helpful in your conversations with your father. Thank you very much for your call, Wendy, but we got to take a quick break. Jimmy Akin, our guest, open forum, 888-318-7884, the number. And the spring sale continues over at shop.catholic.com. 10 to 25% off. In some cases, more than 25% off. Right now, you can visit shop.catholic.com and get your savings.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Go forth and preach the good news. It's not just a suggestion. If you want to take more seriously the command of Jesus to share the gospel with those around you, consider joining St. Paul Street Evangelization. It's a grassroots organization that brings the Catholic faith to the streets in a non-confrontational way. Visit our website, www.streetevangelization.com, to learn more. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. It's time to do our part.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Isn't it awesome that we today do not recognize His presence in the Eucharist? Is it because we really don't go to Him in humbleness of heart and say, Lord, I don't believe, help my unbelief. Lord, I want to see you. I want to recognize you. I cannot live without you. Are we saying that?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Jimmy Akin, our guest. Lines all filled up. Lots of folks with questions. Jimmy, next we go to Westmont, Illinois. Noah, watching on YouTube Live. Noah, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. So I've watched an interview lately with John MacArthur and Ben Shapiro. It's kind of a popular interview online. I don't know if you've seen it. John MacArthur, when he was talking about the Catholic Church, was talking about how essentially the Catholic Church's role in politics was what led in one way or another to the Dark Ages. Like they were, super domineering in their reign and didn't let anyone have freedom to like have any commerce and like they were manipulative in their power and so like the church should never be involved in politics. And ultimately, like the Protestant Reformation was what freed people from that. And it was like when the Reformation happened, every region that followed Protestantism like was suddenly flourishing or something. And everywhere that was covered by Catholicism still was just still in the Dark Ages until they started to catch on. I was wondering how true is it that the Catholic Church was responsible for that? And if it's not true, why is that a misconception?
So this is basically a cartoon version of history. This is not reflective of what actually happened, and this kind of presentation is not taken seriously by competent scholars today. Where it came from is a couple of things. Number one of them is when the Protestant Reformation started, of course, the Reformers broke away from the Catholic Church, and there was enmity between the Reformers and the Catholic Church, and so they didn't like each other. And whenever you don't like someone, you want to justify that to people. And so it's in your interest to try to paint yourself as the good guys who are doing the heroic liberation, and your opponents, the people you don't like, as nasty oppressors. And you see that constantly. You see that, even today in situations whenever you have one group of people come in and do, let's say, a military conquest of a particular area, they always portray themselves as liberators. When back in the 1990s, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait and took it over, they portrayed themselves as liberating Kuwait, when what they really were doing was conquering it. And so there is a natural human tendency towards self-justification and towards vilifying the people that you're in contention with. And so after the advent of the Protestant Reformation, you would have a lot of Protestants who would try to vilify the Catholic Church and portray the time period before the rise of the Reformation as a bad period, and blame it on the Catholic Church. Then you had another movement began that's known as the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment is, you could have religious people in the Enlightenment. They were people who were sometimes called deists. They believed that there would be a God, but that he didn't really involve himself in the world. Or they might reject the existence of God altogether, or they might say, I don't really know if there's a God. But they distanced themselves from classical Christianity. And so they didn't like either the Protestant Reformation or the Catholic Church, and so they also were interested in vilifying the religious establishments of their day and the prior ages. And that's really where the idea comes from that the Middle Ages were dark. This is a metaphor that's used to convey the idea that in the Middle Ages there was an extreme lack of knowledge, and that people were not, say, interested in science or things like that. And that's simply not true. If you listen to histories of science or read histories of science, actually the Middle Ages were a period of enormous creativity. Now, they didn't have modern science, but they were very interested in it. And it was, in fact, the priestly classes in Europe that were the leaders scientifically. They were the people who were the most interested in science. I'd like to recommend a couple of things that you could use to research that. One of them is a book called The Light Ages: The Surprising Story of Medieval Science. It focuses in particular on a particular British monk before the Reformation who was very interested in astronomy. His name was John Warwick, if I recall correctly, or John Westwick. And The Light Ages is a fascinating look at just how scientifically interested people were in the Middle Ages. Also, The Great Courses has a course on the history of science. They actually have a couple. The one you want for this purpose is The History of Science, Antiquity to 1700. And you can get that as an audiobook or watch it as a video series, I think. But it is really, really well done and points out just how intellectually curious and investigative people were in the Middle Ages, not just in the Christian world, but in the Muslim world as well. And so I'd recommend those. In terms of the some of the other things that John MacArthur, who is not favorable towards Catholics, in terms of some of the other things he mentioned, like economic liberty and so forth. Actually, capitalism was invented in Italy in the Renaissance era. And so actually the ideas behind modern capitalism are traced to a Catholic source. And you might want to check out books like How the Catholic Church Saved Western Civilization and things like that to get the other side of the story.
Okay, Noah?
Yeah, thanks so much. So like, is there like some kind of evidence that people usually point to who like make this claim that that you would recommend, like specifically trying to look for how to defend? Well, I guess
it's a very long period of time, so it's
I'd have to know specifics and be in order of what specific claim. I mean, you mentioned several claims, and I kind of gave you a sketch there. If there are others, then I would I'd be happy to research them, but I need to know about them first.
Try those sources, Noah, and call us back, and we'll continue to talk about it, because it's a kind of a propaganda piece that continues to this day. Let's go to Keith in Bellevue, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Keith, your question for Jimmy.
Hello. Well, obviously there's a lot of concerns with what's going on in the church today with modernism, what the German bishops are up to with their troubles, and the Jesuits and the Freemasons and so forth. But, Jimmy, what's the Catholic definition of apostasy or being an apostate? Is it entirely a Baptist Catholic rejecting the Catholic faith, or could you be one like if you reject certain teachings that Catholics have to believe in, like purgatory, hell, divorce, sodomy?
Okay, so the term apostasy has a very specific meaning. It's defined in the Code of Canon Law, and you can find the same definition in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Apostasy is the total repudiation of the Christian faith. So it is not enough if someone rejects particular teachings or even particular dogmas to make one an apostate. If you're rejecting a dogma and you're doing so under certain conditions, that qualifies as heresy, but not apostasy. In order to be an apostate, you have to say, I am no longer a Christian. And that's what an apostate is. It's someone who used to be a Christian, but who has now totally repudiated the Christian faith.
You know what? I just want to, maybe we'll send you a book. It's called Teaching with Authority. It's by our guest, Jimmy Akin, Teaching with Authority, How to Cut Through Doctrinal Confusion and Understand What the Church Really Says, which gives a great deal of information on these kinds of subjects, and I think might be helpful to you. So if you hang on the line, we can send that to Nebraska. Hang on, Keith, and we'll send that to you. Excuse me, that was Noah. No, that was Keith. Sorry. Yeah. All right, going to go to Southern Illinois now. And Mike, listening on Covenant Radio, you are next. Mike, go ahead with your question for Jimmy Akin.
I am a fan of your mysterious world, and I'm hoping you do a subject on, I hope this is on your list, but I'm going to cut to the quick. And what's your bottom line on what Source Q is?
Oh, Source Q. Okay.
So Q is for folks who may not be aware, Q is a hypothetical source that has been proposed to explain certain verses that are in both Matthew and Luke. There are about 235 verses that are paralleled in Matthew and Luke, and there are enough of them that some people have proposed, okay, maybe Matthew and Luke are drawing on a common source. And since the German word for source is Quelle, that has become called the Q source. Now, the Q source is possible. Some people are kind of threatened by the idea, like this is somehow a challenge to the authority of the Gospels, but it's really not. We know the Gospel authors had sources, and this is just one possible proposed source. Some scholars treat Q as if it's a given that it exists. I don't buy that either. I don't think it's a given. I think there are other ways you can explain those 235 verses, like maybe Matthew wrote first and Luke used Matthew as one of his sources, and he took those 235 verses from Matthew, in which case you don't need a separate source. Or reverse it, which is what I think is the most likely view, that Luke wrote first, and then Matthew took the 235 verses from Luke. So you don't need Q as a source once again. But whether there was a Q source, or whether Luke copied from Matthew or Matthew copied from Luke, there are multiple ways to explain how these verses ended up, and there are other ways too. But there are multiple ways to explain how these verses ended up in Matthew and Luke. And we don't need to be dogmatic about one particular view. So I think Q is an interesting idea, but personally I'm skeptical of it. I tend to favor the idea that Matthew used Luke.
Is it the kind of thing that you might do sometime on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World?
Yeah. I've got it on the list.
But there are 1,499 other items on that list. Tomorrow, the 150th episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. drops.
That's right. And Bible questions for 2 hours here on Catholic Answers Live.
Oh, great, Jimmy. That's right. Jimmy will be back tomorrow, and we'll do 2 hours of your Bible questions. If you've got a Bible question, whether it's about things that you find in the Bible or about, as that call was just there, about how the Bible was assembled, who the people were who wrote it, how did it come to its final form that we have now? Is it in its final form? All those kind of Bible questions welcome. Jimmy, thanks very much for Open Forum. See you for 2 hours of Bible tomorrow.
My pleasure.
We'll see you then, God willing. Catholic Answers Live.